Have you ever wondered how to completely defeat an enemy without ever, actually drawing a sword? Well, welcome to this explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into the pure brilliance of ancient Indian strategy. We're going to see how the absolute greatest victories aren't won with brute force at all. Nope, they're won with unparalleled wit and psychological mastery. It's like a giant puzzle, really. So, let's jump right in.
Okay, let's start things off with a fantastic, really relatable everyday example. We've got Tenali Rama. He was the legendary, super witty jester of King Krishnadeva Raya. And since he was the king's absolute favorite, he racked up a lot of valuable gifts, which, naturally, made him a pretty huge target for thieves. So picture this. It's a hot summer night, Rama and his wife are just chilling, relaxing in their courtyard, and he spots thieves lurking right there in the garden. But instead of panicking, or, shouting for the guards, the guy comes up with a genius plan. Knowing they're listening, he turns to his wife and loudly announces, "We have to hide our valuable wealth in our well."
You've got to remember, these ancient tales are completely steeped in a world of kings, courtiers, and cunning plots. But back to our clever jester. So, after making sure the thieves overheard this completely fake plan, Rama casually walks inside his house. He grabs this massive, incredibly heavy box, filled with literally nothing but stones, and dramatically heaves it right into the well. Splash! And then, he just goes back to bed, sleeps like a baby.
So the setup here is just perfectly executed. He let those thieves overhear a totally bogus secret. Believing that heavy box was just packed with jewels, the thieves sprang into action, completely blinded by their own greed. They spend the entire night drawing water from the well, desperately trying to get to that box. Bucket after bucket, hour after hour. By morning, they finally drag it out, only to find a bunch of heavy stones. Talk about a bitter disappointment, right? But here is the absolute best part. They were totally exhausted, and Rama's garden completely watered. He walked out, cheerfully thanked the incredibly drained thieves for doing all his yard work, and they were easily caught. Problem solved, plus free labor.
Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how we can take this exact same concept of a psychological trap and scale it up to an entirely different level. We're talking about moving from a simple domestic annoyance right into a massive geopolitical crisis. You see, Tenali Rama just wanted to get his garden watered and catch some tired thieves. But our next strategist from the source text, a brilliantly clever guy named Chanakya, had a vastly bigger goal. He needed to secure the newly conquered kingdom of Magadha for King Chandragupta. And his target? Oh, it wasn't some common thief. It was a formidable rival minister named Rakshasa.
Let's define exactly who we're talking about here. Rakshasa was the great minister of the rival Nanda kingdom, basically the guys Chandragupta had literally just overthrown. Chanakya knew that for this new kingdom to actually be safe and stable, he couldn't just eliminate Rakshasa. No, he had to win him over. He absolutely needed Rakshasa's immense wisdom to help rule. But there was a major obstacle. Rakshasa was deeply in hiding, and absolutely nobody knew where he was.
Well, actually, scratch that. Almost nobody. There was exactly one guy who knew where Rakshasa was hiding. His incredibly dear friend, a man named Chandan Das. Now, our source text is super clear about this. Chandan Das was fiercely loyal. He just wasn't the kind of guy to let out a secret for anything in the world. You couldn't bribe him, you couldn't beat it out of him. To Chanakya, this secret was practically an unbreakable vault.
So, what do? If you can't break the vault, you have to force the owner to just open it themselves. Chanakya hits upon this absolute master plan, perfectly designed to use an enemy's most noble trait, their loyalty, against them. First, he throws the fiercely loyal Chandan Das in prison. Second, he engineers a massive public crisis by dropping a deadly ultimatum on the whole kingdom. And third, he simply waits. He forces his target to voluntarily reveal himself. He knew for a fact Rakshasa would never surrender to save his own skin, but he just might do it to save his best friend.
The timeline here just builds this incredible suspense. Chanakya issues a truly terrifying decree. If Minister Rakshasa does not return within a fortnight, the head of Chandan Das will be cut off. Literally, off with his head. The news spreads like wildfire, far and wide, and the days start ticking by. Day 7 passes. The pressure is mounting everywhere. And then, day 14. A full fortnight passes, and yet no sign of Rakshasa anywhere. The deadly countdown has officially ended.
The very next morning, this incredibly grim scene unfolds. Chandan Das is dragged right into the center of the marketplace. The whole city turns out for this. Everyone wants to see what's actually going to happen. Would the great Chanakya really execute an innocent man just to get to his enemy?
The atmosphere is unbelievably tense. Chandan Das is marched right up to the execution block.
The order to cut off his head is read out loud. The execution is literally moments away. The entire crowd is just waiting, complete breathless silence. Which leaves us with this heavy ultimate question. Will Rakshasa actually appear to save his friend, or is Chandan Das about to pay the ultimate price for keeping an unbreakable secret?
And just at that very moment, right when you think all hope is completely gone, a man comes sprinting into the marketplace, just screaming at the top of his lungs. Every single eye turns toward him. It is obvious he's traveled a huge distance. His clothes are covered in dust, he's dripping with sweat, he looks totally exhausted. And he shouts, "Stop! Stop! Here I am! I am Rakshasa whom you seek. For God's sake, spare Chandan Das."
Phew, the tension in the air just instantly shatters. The marketplace absolutely erupts. People are shouting in pure joy. Oh, it's Minister Rakshasa, Chandan Das is saved. This dark, grim execution transforms right before their eyes into a totally joyous resolution. Chanakya's high-stakes gamble paid off flawlessly. He didn't have to launch a massive manhunt. He didn't have to fight a bloody battle. It worked.
And this brilliantly illustrates the true power of a perfect strategy. Instead of a bloodbath, Chanakya pulls off a total, comprehensive victory. He immediately steps up and receives his former enemy, Rakshasa, with deep, immense honor. Because he showed up to save his friend and was met with such respect, Rakshasa actually agrees to become the minister of Magadha. That is the exact outcome Chanakya needed to secure the kingdom for King Chandragupta. And as for Chandan Das, the insanely loyal friend isn't just spared. Chanakya showers him with rich presents and sends him home safely. Like I said, a total victory, all without ever drawing a sword.
So, whether it's a clever jester tricking some exhausted thieves into doing his yard work, or a master statesman using a man's own fierce loyalty to capture him and secure a whole kingdom, both of these stories show us something crucial. Deeply understanding human nature, that is your absolute greatest weapon. So, I'm going to leave you with this final thought to ponder. What is your valuable wealth in the well? How can you actually use an opponent's own assumptions and traits against them to outsmart your next big challenge? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep thinking strategically.